Um, the meeting is just going to be recorded. Let me start. Welcome to the session on understanding feminism in varying shades. Impact
Louder,
on
please.
Are you able to hear me?
Very faintly.
A little higher volume would help.
Yeah.
I'll try doing that. Is this better?
Yeah, it's better.
Yes.
All right. I'll be a little louder. Let me start by thanking the President, Dr. Ranjana Banerjee, for organizing this timely event, and Dr. Subhadra Channa for providing her valuable time to speak to us. Before we commence, let us start, join our hands in prayer. I'll just read it out. Uh, Today, we come together as a group of empowered women seeking God's blessings to be with us and to give us the strength to go through these trying times when death and devastation are all around. Let us be guided with wisdom, bring peace to our worries and hope in our disappointments. We pray to restore faith in humanity and to give us the courage as a woman power to stand by those who have lost much in sickness and in death. Some housekeeping rules before we start. I request all of you to keep your audios on mute and only unmute when you have to speak, please. And all your questions, please type them in the chat box to Dr. Channa, and we'll take this up as soon as the session is, the talk is over. May I now invite Dr. Ranjana Banerjee for the welcome address. Ma'am.
Thank you, Varsha. Friends, we have gathered once again to listen to a very invigorating talk by Dr. Surendra Channa, who is going to give it, Subhadra Channa, who is going to give it to us on feminism and its different dimensions. But just to help you to understand the concept of feminism, it is in the work of Mary Wollstonecraft's text in the Vindication of the Rights of Women in 1792 that is considered to be the first text on modern feminism. By the mid-19th century, the campaign for female suffrage and women's rights to vote became the central theme of the women's movement. And it was believed that if women could vote, all other forms of discrimination or prejudices based on gender and sex would disappear. Feminism is a movement that challenges the abuse of power and seeks equality and justice. It is about changing the way we think about men and women and changing the way we narrate to one another as women and men. In modern usage, the term feminism is associated with the women's movement and has played an important role in attempts made to upsurge the social status of women all over the world. Feminism has been associated with several views, one of which we will listen today, and divergent positions. Feminists have accepted both revolutionary as well as reform strategies for achieving their ends. Feminist theories have drawn on different political traditions and values. And the women's movement has tried to accomplish goals that range from the achievement of female suffrage, equality in education and in jobs, to the legalization and there are volumes that we can speak on feminism and divergence in modern era, which our enlightened speaker is bringing to us through an interactive session. May I now hand it back to Varsha to continue. Over to you, Varsha.
Thank you, Ranjana Di. That was really a good introduction. Let me now introduce our esteemed speaker for the evening. May I again request everyone to mute?
Varsha, you cannot be heard.
You're not able to hear me?
Yes.
No? Okay. I'll increase the volume a little more. May I request others to keep their mics on mute, please? Let me introduce our esteemed speaker for the evening, Dr. Subhadra Mitra Channa. She's worked as a professor at the Department of Anthropology, University of Delhi, and retired in 2017. Her research interests cover a wide range of issues: identities, embodied and gendered, religion and cosmology, environmental issues, including landscapes, sacred and urban, and various aspects of marginalization. She has numerous awards and honors to her name, including the prestigious Charles Wallace Visiting Fellowship in Anthropology at Queen's University, UK, Fulbright lecturer at Alabama and from the University of South Carolina, USA. She was a visiting scholar to the University of Kentucky and has been nominated Fellow of the Society for Applied Anthropology in the USA. She's been a senior visiting professor at various places worldwide, including the Center for African and Oriental Studies, University of Salvador, Brazil, the MSH at Paris at the invitation of the French government, Kyoto University at the invitation of the Japanese government. She served as president of the Indian Anthropological Association. She received the Sarath Chandra Roy Gold Medal for lifetime contribution to cultural anthropology by the Asiatic Society, and also the Distinguished Teacher Award by the University of Delhi for being judged as the best serving teacher of the university in 2016. Her other contributions include serving as chair of the Commission on Anthropology of Women of the International Union of Anthropological and Ethnological Studies, an international body of anthropologists, from 2003 to 2008. She was also this is 2013. She was elected vice president of the International Union of Anthropological and Ethnological Studies, Sciences, in July 2013. She's presently serving as the senior vice president of this body, chair of the Commission on Marginalization and Global Apartheid. She writes widely on various topics, including gender, caste, tribes, livelihood, and the environment, cosmology, ecology, and she's published more than 80 scholarly papers. I now request Dr. Channa to address our session. Thank you.
Thank you, Varsha, for that long. And anyway, I think it is a formality that we all have to go through. Now, I am a little scared. We are having a huge storm outside. I hope the internet stays. It suddenly started this storm anyway. So I'm so happy to see all of you here. And I was told by Ranjana Banerjee that make it an interactive session. So I do hope that since we have such distinguished scholars who have joined the meeting, and I'm so happy to see them, that there is going to be some lively interaction. And I should not be like, I'm not teaching a class, so it is not going to be like that, because most of you are very well informed and you have already got a very good understanding of what feminism is about. Now, to begin with, I just recalled a small incident when I was teaching, giving some lectures on gender and feminism at a particular university in West Bengal. And one of the students, and some of the students, not one, I think some of the students, they came up to us, they told me that, ma'am, a lot of the teachers who come here to teach us about gender and feminism also tell us that we are not feminists. Now, what do they mean by that? Now, I was a little, taken aback. I said, why should people declare when they are teaching feminism that? Because I thought that maybe this whole concept of feminism has acquired a kind of a stereotypical image. And often we find in day-to-day life that people do refer, oh, that person is a feminist, quote unquote, like it is some kind of a derogatory term, especially, like people associated with women who are actually not feminine, like they don't want to marry, or they don't want to have children, or they are too aggressive, or some stereotypes are there. So a lot of women who want to be on the right side of society often declare that we are not feminists. But as rightly pointed out by Ranjana, feminism is a movement. But to me, I look at feminism as a perspective on life. It's a way of looking at the world. It's a way of recognizing that it makes a difference in this world, whether you are born as a man or a woman. As simple as that. In the sense that we experience the world through a different body. And this experiential reality is different, so that is one aspect, and that is an aspect which is neutral, I would say. Okay, we are different, we have different bodies, we have different experiences of bodies, we are differently situated to the environment. But what feminism, the root of feminism lies not in this difference. The root of feminism lies in that this difference is then incorporated within what we call as structural inequalities. And these structural inequalities are very evident in complex societies. And as an anthropologist, okay, we have talked, Ranjana already introduced the Western concept of feminism. And most people are accustomed to look at feminism or understand feminism within these Western categories of radical feminism, Marxist feminism, identifying it with Mary Wollstonecraft, and the suffrage movement. So we have followed that Western tradition, which in itself is fine. But when I talk of an experiential reality, everybody has not experienced the world the way those women experienced the world. They began their particular kind of feminist movement through their historical experience of being in a particular kind of situation of structural inequality. But as an anthropologist, we are accustomed to go beyond this Western concept, especially to look at what are the other ways in which feminism can be interpreted. It is a consciousness which both men and women can have. Now, when I talk of feminism, it is not confined to women only. And it is not only a woman's movement or a woman's consciousness, a woman's perspective. Feminism in a very abstract and generalized sense, as I understand it, is not just about being men or women, not just about bodies, but at the social level, at the cultural level, it is about the dominance of what I would call masculine values and norms in a society. And it is here that we find that if we go right back as an anthropologist, if I go into hunting food gathering stage of society, there have been they are supposed to have equality. You don't have structural inequality in hunting food gathering societies, but there is cognitive inequality. There is cosmological inequality. Like I have worked, I have a book also on the pastoral nomadic communities of the upper Himalayas. Now, this is a community, it's a particular kind of a Bhotia community, they call them Jars. Now, if you go into the village, you will find, oh, this is a feminist space altogether, because you find the whole village is dominated by women, because being a pastoral community, the men go out and they herding sheep and they're hardly there in the village. And when they come back to the village, they are very much marginalized because they have nothing to do with the village. The village is dominated, the social life is dominated by the women. Fine, that's a great situation to be. But when you go deeper, I found that even though social life is dominated by women, women have a lot of agency, lot of independence, lot of power. When it comes to the cosmological realm, men are still considered superior because the male body is considered more pure, more superior, and more sacred than that of the female. It probably has very little to do with social interactions or inequality, but still it is there at the back of the mind or the back of the society, or it is there in their rituals, it is there in their belief systems, in their cognition. In a similar way, for example, French anthropologist Maurice Godelier had worked amongst the Baruas of New Guinea, where again he found that, okay, every women have agency, women do all the work, I mean, there is equal division of labor, everything. But again, coming to that cosmological level, to the level of the sacred, there are some sacred aspects that is a male prerogative. Now, this is what he called as symbolic domination. So the symbolic domination of masculinity, not of individual males, not of men. For example, people joke, they say, oh, you feminists, but you don't talk about all the henpecked husbands or the dominating women. And that's okay. I mean, those are very, on the ground realities when we are talking at the individual level. But when I'm talking of feminism as a principle, as when we talk of universal patriarchy, what is it meant? It is not meant to say that all men are more dominant than women. What it is meant to say that social values, social norms are masculine in content. Masculinity, or what pertains, what is projected as masculine values, those have more value in society than what is projected as feminine values. Like in urban contemporary societies, if we look, we always talk about the dichotomy between the public and the domestic domain. And we always value the public domain over the domestic domain, like saying, oh, she's only a housewife, which is a very common phrase. And when I say, are we feminists? I mean, I would say that even though I have been dealing, like, supposing I say that as a scholar of feminism or whatever of understanding of feminism, I may call myself a feminist, but look at me. 3 days before, I was taking a walk in my neighborhood and I met a lady. She was walking and she introduced herself. She said, I've just joined here. I just come here on a transfer. And what did I ask her? I asked her, oh, what does your husband do? And she looked at me and she told me, actually, I am a CBI director. I'm in the Central Bureau of Investigation and I'm a director of persecution. And I apologized to her. I said, I'm so sorry I asked you that question. Because we have this masculine values so ingrained in our consciousness that even making all the conscious effort to come out of it, we still make these faux pas. We ask a woman, what, has your husband been transferred? What does he do? And I was so ashamed of myself when she answered, and I apologized to her. And I was thinking to myself, why did I ask this question? I should have asked her, like if, now look at it in a reverse. If I was talking to a man and he has said we had just been transferred, I would not have asked him, has your wife been transferred? Is she working? What work is she doing? So these have become so naturally ingrained into our subconsciousness. this dominance of masculine values, not of men, not of women, but the values pertaining to that. Like, we always value people who are in the public domain, men or women, doesn't matter. Even if a woman is in the public domain, we value her more. We do not value women who may be otherwise extremely efficient, very talented, doing and contributing to society. After all, the building block of society are these women who are the homemakers. But do we give them the recognition? The feminists are asking for that recognition, but still, within our deep consciousness, these prejudices remain. So when we go from every stage of society, when we look into pastoral societies, agricultural societies, now I won't go into the details of all that ethnographies and examples, because there's a vast amount of literature. But what we find is in different ways, in different historical contexts, in different social formations, the same value system repeats itself, but with different structural, social, and cultural manifestations. Right down to the hunting food gathering societies, they still have ritual objects that only men can access, which are inaccessible to women. Women have every other thing that they can do, but that particular, the most sacred realm is denied to them. So that is their way of expressing masculine superiority. Now, we don't know the origin of it. There have been many theories. And again, I don't want to go into all those theories, and Nancy Codro's theory. There have been psychological theories. Of course, every one of us is very familiar with the Freudian theory of, and the Neo-Freudian theory, Freud, Lacan, and all of those theories. But this is a thing on which we need to ponder, and we need to also self-criticize ourselves. Like, I often tend to find myself saying or doing something and then saying, oh, why did I say that? Why did I do that? And I just gave you that example. Now, going to India. Now, look, coming away from this Western feminist thought, which entered India much later, I think in the 70s, let's go back and see, what does feminism mean in this context? To me, feminism means a consciousness of, or an understanding of this inequality and the structural inequality, and the fact that women have been denied personhood. The women have been denied agency. So whenever women have asked for their personhood, asked for agency, in each of these contexts, I would say a feminism was working. Historically, going back, whatever evidence, I mean, I don't want to go into all that Vedic thing and this and that women were glorious in the Vedic period. We don't know about that. But I locate a very strong feminism in the Bhakti cult, the 12th to Bhakti movement, where women questioned patriarchy by denying or asking for personhood or asking for agency, breaking away from Brahmanical patriarchy, breaking away from the norms that were imposed on them by society, in writing, in leaving their homes, like Mirabai. Even if they took the path of, renunciation, this in itself was an act of rebellion. It was an act which clearly indicates that they thought that they had the right to protest. When married into a Kshatriya family, Mirabai said that she was a Vaishnava. That was an act of protest. She said she was a devotee of Krishna, not of her husband. That was, in that context, an act of protest. The women who left their homes to become ascetics and nuns, those are acts of protest. In the village where I worked in Upper Himalayas, there were large number, not large number, but there were several young women who took a decision not to get married. I'm not saying that not getting married is an act of feminism, but I'm saying that they took a decision, Buddhist nuns. And there was this nun in the village who I talked to. I mean, she was not living in a monastery. And I said, how did you become a nun? And her narrative was very interesting. She said, I was married. Then one day I decided that I didn't want to remain married. So I told my husband, you just turn around and you take that road and get away from here. Just walk. And I will want to lead my life the way I want to live. And obviously, she found that the way she could live without her husband, whom she had just asked to just take that road. She pointed never come back. These are what I would say feminists. Women who have the courage to challenge the control and power, the structural control and power of society. Because you see, as I said, that one aspect of power is differences. The other aspect of, one aspect of being men and women is just being different. The other aspect, of course, is the power hierarchies into which these differences are incorporated, the structural constraints, and work for peace, for the way the environment has been exploited, the way capitalism has exploited. When coming from hunting, food gathering, right to modern capitalism, what is capitalism based on? All this aggressive masculine values, exploitation, aggression. We are always told, like, especially like in American society, and we are trying to imbibe all those values. Be aggressive, go to the office, prove yourself, be professional. What does mean professional mean? Professional means you accept the work pattern that is so masculine in character. Don't take leave when you have your periods. No, you have to live up to the masculine character. Pretend as if nothing has happened to it. Why not? A woman does not become inefficient if she takes a day off when she's not feeling up to it. But we have these ingrained values. No, we have to accept the masculine norms of work. We have to treat our feminine bodies as if we are men. But why should we? But can we go out and if we do, then the boss or the people say, oh, we don't hire women because women are not professional, because they want to take leave when their child is sick. That is because the whole society is already dominated by masculine values. Why is taking care of a sick child not a service to society? After all, it is that child who is going to become a member of society, a productive member of society. Why a mother is made to feel guilty if she takes off from office if a child is sick? Of course, now we are having all kinds of changes in laws and changes in norms. But even at the back of it, people still say, oh, they are not so, they will also snigger at it. They said, okay, women have to take childcare leave, so men also have to take childcare leave. And these things are still not accepted as mainstream, as something which should have always been there. They are still accepted as something which were introduced as a reform. See, understand, why did we have to reform and introduce them as a reform? Why were they not part of the entire formation of office culture right from day one? Because all these domains were dominated by masculine values, not by men, but by the masculine values. How long do I have to speak? Sorry, am I exceeding my time? Because I think we need time for discussion.
Maybe another 10 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So
Take it till 6 o'clock and then we'll open the floor.
okay, no problem. No, I was just wondering whether I am speaking, because I didn't really know. So coming back to this bodily experience, and when our main theme today is feminism only of one time. Yes, at the heart of it, feminism to me is to have a critical approach and a consciousness of this gendering of power in society, of social power. And this gendering of social power is expressed, as Maurice Godelier has said, in a symbolic domination more than it is expressed in actual de facto, functional relations in society. Because at the level of individuals, at the level of families, at the level of workings on the day-to-day basis, there are much scope for negotiations, power hierarchies between the genders, between men and women. And of course, I have not touched upon the last wave of feminism, which actually critiques the dichotomous model of male and female. That would be going away from this basic discourse on feminism that we have. So even from within feminism, there have been many internal critics, even in the West. Like, again, this bodily experience. Are all women in the same situation? They are not. What is oppression for one may not be oppression for the other. What is liberation for one may not be liberation for the other. We found that in two major streams of feminism in the USA and in the Western world, in what we call as Black feminism, and in India and Dalit feminism. And Dalit feminisms have been critiques of feminism right from the time feminism was recognized as feminism. And I talked of the Bhakti movement. The second recognized the level of feminism was during the freedom struggle. That was when women came out and they had, the power to contest their positions and going out, and saying that, no, this is not what I want, that is what I want. Like, in Chokher Bali, the protagonist, she says, I walk off, I don't care. I don't want any man in my life. I'm going to join the freedom struggle. So that was a choice. That particular historical moment gave women a choice not to conform to the existing patriarchal norms or to the existing values of masculinity and femininity. But what has happened? Now, I was again reading this paper on this narrative about women who had joined the Telangana movement, or even the Dalit feminists. They say that once, or even the Naxalite movement, while the movement is on, they have agency, they have power, they have space. But once it is gone, then they are again asked or expected to revert back to their feminine roles. That is exactly what happened after the Second World War as well. Because while the war was going on, there was a lot of empty spaces for women to fill in. And they had a lot of agency, they acquired a lot of agency. And of course, some of it remained. And that is how the feminist movement also began after the First World War, because women had tasted some freedom of coming out of their houses and working. But it isn't that things remain the same. It isn't that, I mean, if we go right back into gender theory, we go into the history of how women's position or the feminine and masculine worlds have changed. We see ups and downs. It is not a linear progression. And so I mean, there are a lot of complexities. I mean, nothing can be explained in very simplistic, direct, and we all understand that because you're all scholars. You understand that we cannot be very simplistic about anything. So every time there is a historicity, there is always a situational factor to this. To the nature of feminism. So the Black feminists, they critique the white feminists by saying that, okay, you want sexual liberation, but we, the Black bodies who have been sexually exploited, we don't want more sex, we want families. We want our husbands, which we are not getting because you are putting all the Black men in prison. I was watching one program on TV in USA, and it was all about these young Black women, young and middle-aged, who came and talked about how they have been struggling as single women, trying to cope with their families and children because their men are in prison. And most of you are aware that the rate of imprisonment of Black men in the USA is very high. So there, the women said, we don't want what the white women want to be liberated from their husbands. They want their husbands to leave them alone or whatever. We want our husbands. We want to have a family. We want, because we are not getting it. We are struggling on our own. We are all, I mean, if the white women want to be alone, we are already alone. We don't want to be alone. So these are different ways, just like the Dalit women said. We don't want the kind of liberation, the kind of things like widow remarriage, which was one of the prime movements, of the aspects of the feminist movement. We already have widow remarriage. We want freedom from sexual exploitation. That is what we are subjected to. We also want to be, respectable. Now, you don't want to be respectable like one of the icons of American feminism was Madonna, of sexual liberation. And the Black feminists really critiqued that. They said, we don't want to be Madonnas. We are already that. Everybody is looking at us as sexual objects. We don't want to be sexualized. We want to be treated with respect. We want to be treated as women, not objectified in that sense, like we are. So different situations call for different forms of feminism. But underlying it all is this critique of the existing social order of the power hierarchies that are always gendered. And finally, there is this comparatively new wave of feminism, which says that gendering on dichotomous lines is in itself a symbolic violence. Like Judith Butler and others who said that, why are we only thinking of male and female? What about those who do not fall within those dichotomous categories? That why is gender always on this masculinity and femininity? There are other kinds of gender identities that lie outside of this particular form of gender identity. So every time it is turning back, looking at yourself and forming another critical assessment where we write. That is why we have so many waves of feminism. The first wave, second wave, why? Because at every point it is going back and looking at and reassessing yourself. Am I a feminist? So we can start with that question and we can end with that question. Am I a feminist? And what does it mean? Thank you. Now I think we can have some discussion.
Thank you. That was very insightful, Dr. Channa. You've really
Yes.
challenged our thinking on what is normalcy. I'm really grateful for this. I now request all participants, they can start typing their questions in the chat box and I can read it out. Yeah.
If they want to interact straight away, they can do that also.
Yeah, sure. We can always ask them to unmute your
Unmute
mic.
and Nita, you wanted to interact?
Yeah, I'm back. I had to let my dog out.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Subhadra, for a lovely presentation. I
Call me
really enjoyed listening to you again after a Kunming meet, and it was great. You know, talking about feminism, you talked about the women power and the empowerment of women, how essential it is, and you touched upon a lot of factors that are contributing into what we call how do we people think about femininity. And I think empowerment is a very important issue. I would like you to tell us a little more. You know, Bhakti movement that you talked about is the one way, but that may not be the only way for
No.
feminism.
No, that was an example, and it was a big example because that was a period of, I think, 2 or 3 centuries,
Right.
where women found a particular mode of
Of
escape.
getting into that, right?
Because religion, in fact, religion, just like it has suppressed women, religion has also given in different epochs women a lot of, like, for example, the Catholic nuns in the medieval times. They were very powerful. Like the royal women, the sisters and the daughters of the royal families, they used to become nuns, because then that is the way in which they would retain all their power and their political influence, and they used to be like kingmakers and kingbreakers in those times. Till you see, this is how things change. Till the Protestant movement started, and they threw the women out of the church.
Right.
So it was supposed to have been a reformist movement, but it was completely against women.
Feminism, right?
And then you had, you know, the women, there are no nuns in the Protestant movement, and even the Catholic nuns had a lot of their powers taken away.
And the example that you gave of Mirabai is definitely a very important example.
Yes, and Bahinabai, and there were others. You see, in Bengal or in all eastern part, you have these Baul movement and this Vaishnavite movement, and these were women who were social discards. Most of them who joined this movement, the social discards of it. I mean, Sharat Chandra has written a lot about this, and other Bengali novelists have written, especially Sharat Chandra, that how it was a space. You see, women have been constantly making effort to find a space for themselves.
Like Chipko movement was one very important one.
Yeah, environment is one. And now, of course, there are so many different ways in which women are finding this space. But it is not always that the space which that you think it would be, it is. Like, for example, in the very modern sector, women thought that if they got educated and they worked in offices or they worked outside, they would have the space for freedom, but they didn't. Because that again turned out to be more of a space of exploitation and dominance, male dominance, where women had to fight every inch of the way. And in the US, for example, and even in India to a very large extent, I have personally worked as a woman, and I know it is like working, you know, you are working against odds, and you have to really fight. I mean, a woman has to work 10 times more than a man to prove herself.
That's very true. I mean, as I always say, you know, Madame Curie always said, you know, if she was a male, she would have got the award 6 years earlier.
Yeah.
That is, of course, there. I would want you to talk a little on, you know, when in the current scenario, but now what is happening is, we are talking of the sustainable development goals. We are talking of equality of women at the grassroots level. How do we talk about it? Because sexuality is something
because environment and sustainable
growth. Home, and how does that become? So maybe you could talk a little on that.
Absolutely. In fact, that is something in which I have also written and I have talked about it. See, when I said that overall society is dominated by masculine values, which means that the industrial capitalism conquered the world on the basis of these masculine values. These were mainly of exploitation, aggression, and devastation, basically destruction. Destroy people, genocide, destroy the environment, deforestation, destruction, mining, war. I mean, men and these masculine values, women have also participated in that destruction. I'm not saying, but the dominance of these masculine values of aggression, war, and exploitation has really devastated our earth. So the present generation feminists are saying, let's go back to the feminine values of nurture and care. Chupko being one. Let's care for the trees, not destroy them. Let us care for the environment. Let us nurture the environment. So you have the Gaia, the earth mother, coming back to the earth mother again, treating earth as a mother and not as a resource to be dominated and exploited. So making those feminine values dominant, which are of nurture and care. Now, in the first generation feminists, women thought that if they became like men, they would get empowered. Like, they would, if they dressed up like men, and if they became aggressive and they did not marry and they became very professional, they would. Now it is completely different. Now it is celebrate femininity. Make feminine values prominent in society. Let these values take over. Don't celebrate war. Celebrate nurturance. Celebrate conservation.
Because now we are talking about women to be the power who can bring more peace.
Peace, yes. Because peace
if
is very important for environment. Because each one of us knows, and everybody knows, how destructive war can be for the environment.
Absolutely.
Shubhadrati, if I can just make an, Nita, are you done?
Yeah.
I just want to make an observation. Today's generation of women have been able to break down many shackles and many concepts. And those orthodox, primitive, very traditional concepts of feminism that we had in our childhood have moved away. So do you think that this is what we call as a radical feminism in the present generation?
I don't know how you understand radical feminism. We understand radical feminism in the Freudian sense of biological.
Yes,
right.
But as I was just discussing with Nita also, you see, whenever women, I mean, it is not a struggle that goes away, because every time women try to find a space for themselves, whenever they take a step forward, they are made to struggle to even attain that particular point, no matter what, even if it is in politics, whether it is in education, whether it is in any aspect of life. We are all women, and we know, and we see around us also. If you are like how men resent women being in power, and
Yes.
that is made so evident. So
the perception of the women is always very fixed.
Yeah, so it is so obvious that they don't want women in power. I mean,
yes,
sniggering behind their backs. I mean, once I was asked to, and I never repeated that mistake again. Somebody asked me to talk about gender and feminism to some whole room full of policemen. I tell you, I was humiliated. The way they just created this wall. Most of them went off to sleep very deliberately in front rows that we are not interested. Some of them came out with such nasty comments after very few were receptive. And I said, sorry, I cannot talk to, we do talk of making efforts, that society changing. Where has society changed? How much of society has changed? How many people in the police station, if a woman goes, how is she treated? Or how does the police or anybody for that matter, a politician, treat women's issues? How they try to cover up every time there is a politician in a rape case, like what happened in that Unnao case. It's always like cover up. After all, he's a man. People actually talk about it. is a man. How do you expect even women will say that? Even the wife will say that. And that is what I call the dominance of masculine values, not the dominance of men. In so many of these high-profile rape cases, the wife comes out in defense of her husband, projecting as if he has done nothing wrong. Because society demands it that
Yes.
her status is linked to that of her husband.
Yes.
Not only a social status, her feminine status as well. So if she acknowledges that my husband was having, affair, like high profile, look at Hillary Clinton.
Right.
She didn't, she stood up. Everybody knew. But it was her own ego. She had to, even her own political career. If she had acknowledged her husband's this thing, she would have lost her political career. So this is how women are still stuck. What I call the structural inequalities.
In this case, we are happy to see the stance Melinda Gates has taken.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
That is exposing, never mind husband or wife.
Gates is not in politics.
No, Ranjana,
not politics. I'm saying as a woman.
Ranjana, that is not true. That is not true. Melinda Gates has had an understanding with Bill Gates. We'll not get into that. They have an understanding by which she has divorced.
Absolutely.
Absolutely nothing to do with feminism.
Dr. Channa,
because if it was with feminism, see, if Melinda Gates had to fight an election in the USA, she would have never done this.
That's true.
Because they were in this, they were in this the entire business concept which Bill Gates had floated. We'll not get into that because it's politically unfair to talk about it, because they had some problems with the financial, biases which they had. It has got nothing to do with feminism.
Absolutely, I totally agree.
Dr. Channa?
No, she could have done it long back. She didn't do that because they had financial understanding. They never saw eye to eye for a long time.
You have more questions?
One minute, Subhadraji, can I just? My name is Purobi. I just want to interject here for a small, opinion of mine, which I would like to point out here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, of course. I can hear you.
Yeah. So my personal opinion about this male dominance on women and the way they get away with it, whether it's a value system or whether it's their thought process or whether it's the way our society is, I have grown to realize over a period of time, having worked in the male-dominated dominated functions for a very, very long time, we have a lot to blame ourselves than to blame the men. We have not learned to stand up to our own rights. We have not been able to say what, as you very rightly said, that if Hillary Clinton had to speak against her husband, she would have lost her political career. Now, the point is that there is a very thin divide between what we can do, what we should do, and what could have been done.
Purobi, just see, what am I talking about? I am talking about the overall dominance of masculinity in society.
Yeah, I'm talking about the
structural inequalities. Women are also within that. We are enculturated into this. Right from day one, when we are born, we are told, in various ways, like when we were small, we were told that, girls don't laugh very loud, or girls don't speak very loud, or boys do this. It goes back into our consciousness. It takes a lot of this consciousness to come out and also to challenge it. You see, it is not always possible. You cannot always
just let me finish. That it is not always possible. That's what I said. There's a hairline divide. Why? Because today, if you have to rear a child, if you have a child at home, and you have a husband and a wife, and the child has to be groomed, and he has to be, he has to eat, he has to be bathed, he has to be sent to school. It is always the mother who is taking the, the leadership role in grooming the child or bringing up the child. It has got nothing to do with feminism. It has got nothing to do with a husband-wife equation or anything. It just, the entire society, as you said, the whole structure is built in such a manner that it is expected the woman, whether she's working, whether she's not working, whether she's earning more than the husband, or whatever it may be, at the end of the day, it is the woman who is coming across as the person who's taking care of the child. I do not know where one breaks this, because I have stood up to this for a very, very long time at a cost of many, many things. But I have not been able to break it. The glass ceiling breaking is not easy. It's a very difficult task. Now, women are their own enemies. Men are there who are supporting the women who are my enemies. So it's a very convoluted kind of a situation. You know, I don't know how to express this. I mean, I have gone through this over and over
it
in
is
years.
complicated because both men and women are part of that same structural
exactly,
part of that
exactly,
same value system.
Exactly.
You
I
cannot
want to
break
point
up
that
that.
out, yeah.
Also, it is, you see, there are more complex situations, issues to that. Women also, they realize that their power lies in their control over the domestic domain. That is also a source of power. One cannot contest it. And as a feminist, we should also not contest it. Let it remain our power, because that is somewhere where we do dominate and we can dominate. And this is the present generation feminists are saying, don't give away your femininity. Don't give away your feminine values. Don't give away your feminine power, but make them your instrument, you are like your weapons of war.
Dr. Channa, sorry to interject. There are many questions, so I'll do this in the interest of time. Let me collate a few which have come on the chat, and they've been waiting to speak to you about this.
How long do we have? Another 15 minutes?
Just about. We'll finish off at 6:30. So Varsha, collate and give it.
Sure. So I'll just read it out one after the other, and you can respond to it. And then there's Rekha, who's raised her hand as well. So one is from Malati, asking about the position of feminism in India today in terms of policies. That's one. And the second is Manjushri wants to talk about the Gandhian attitude towards womanhood. So if we can do those two first, and then Rekha can ask a question.
Yeah, I will just quickly go on. In my opinion, because I have worked across the board in India, and I worked in villages, and I worked with women I think the lower we go down in society, the more power we find in the women.
Yes.
Because these women have, so there are two things. Firstly, a gender is a man to woman equation, right? Where men are more powerful, they will try to keep the women, they will have more power to subjugate the women, like the president of the United States. But if men themselves don't have any power, like if they are Dalits, they are landless laborers, they are poor men, they don't have much power anyway. They don't have any social power. They don't have much agency of their own. And then one Black feminist had also talked about shared oppression. So men and women in those categories I have seen, I worked amongst the very poor, they also have this sense of shared oppression. Men and women, husband and wife, they both feel that they are both oppressed and both exploited by society. So they stand there closer bonding. And of course, because the women are equal bread earners or whatever you say, they support the family. One excellent movie by Shyam Benegal, Ankur, really has brought this out so beautifully. Like how this Dalit woman, she is exploited by the landlord, the rich landlord. The landlord's wife is the most powerless person because she's voiceless. But this Dalit woman has a voice, and she supports her husband the day this rich landlord tries to attack him, and she fights for him. So they have more agency, more power, definitely. The second one, Gandhian, this is a very complex situation because I have also closely read Gandhi, and Gandhi wanted to erode the difference between masculinity and femininity. He himself imbibed a lot of feminine qualities in himself, like, doing all the work that women do, even assisting in his wife's childbirth and taking on a lot of feminine attributes into himself. But at the same time, I don't know whether he transcended patriarchy. He did, because he took decisions on behalf of his wife. He did not let her take all her decisions on her own. Or rather, he manipulated those decisions, like he imposed his decision to be a celibate on his wife. She never asked her. I mean, he just told her one day that we are going to live like brother and sister. So Gandhi is, I think, very complex to analyze and, take out all these different threads of where he's feminine, where he's masculine, where he is patriarchal, where he's not, where he's consciously trying not to be patriarchal. Because after all, he did also encourage the women to come out and come out on the roads, but only for the
Struggle movement.
for the freedom movement.
Could you say your question?
Yeah, I will
Then we'll
just
go ahead.
add to what has been said. I have actually worked on women's role in civil disobedience movement in Delhi during 1930-32. Now, during this 2-year period, the movement in Delhi against the British was carried on entirely by women activists. The simple reason being that all the male activists, they were put behind bars. So the space was left for women
And to develop.
activists to carry on the struggle. Moreover, women had this additional advantage. They were still maintaining parda, but they had this advantage of moving from mohalla to mohalla, unseen by the British CID and police. So much so that women who had not even stepped out of their homes ever could be seen on the roads in very actively in the protest movement, against picketing of liquor shops. I mean, women who were in pardas, they were there on the roads outside the liquor shops. They were very much involved in the boycott of liquor shops, boycott of foreign clubs. Now the thing is, once the movement got fizzled out, it got over in 1934, mid-1934, but it started fizzling out by end of 1932. So say, even if there were 20 women activists, only 5 chose to remain in the struggle. The rest went back to being look after their families. And
I already mentioned the same thing happened during the World Wars. It happened during various movements, that while the movement is on, the women are out. Once the movement is gone, the women go back to their huts.
Yes, I think basically Gandhi always felt that if women chose to stay at home and look after their families, that in no way made them inferior.
That is the most important point.
Yes.
This is what true feminists are saying today, that being a woman is no way inferior to being, doing. That is exactly what I was trying to say, that we have accepted masculine values and things as superior. We have devalued women's contribution to society.
So this is exactly what you
not doing anything else.
Yeah, what you have been saying about celebrating nurturance.
Yeah,
this is exactly that.
Nurturance. It is probably the most important human value that there is, because without it, we will not have a human race.
Exactly.
It will be gone.
To related questions. Can we take them as well? If that's
Yeah.
okay?
Can I say something?
Uh,
This is Meera Bondre. Can I say something, Varsha?
yes, yes,
Or-
Dr.
Yeah. I just wanted to sort of reiterate that the lower we go, we see perhaps the stronger women. It has been recognized in this sense that the UN also recognized it. As Neeta mentioned and put forward the environmental point of, from that point of view also. There, the conference to which I was invited in 1991, the name of the conference was Women and Environment Partners in Life. It was in Miami. It was a global assembly organized by the United Nations. So since then, see, people are aware about that. The gist of the whole thing was that women have found out solutions to the problems around them. And they were selected and invited from different parts of the world. And it was a huge conference. It was preparatory to the Rio conference in 1992. So this is very important. And then decades have to pass to actually realize what they have done and to accept. So generations, I would say. So this is just an example I wanted to put forward, that not that changes are not there.
Of course they have, but you see, it's this like moving up and down,
Yeah.
forward, backward, forward,
Not
backward.
a
You go two
sustained
steps
chain
forward,
movement
you go
happening.
one step back like that.
Like this.
Yes, not a sustained movement towards progressivism.
It will
Yes.
take time. It will
That
be
is
many,
true.
many years, I think.
It is not that change is not happening, but what we're trying to
Yeah, it is, but what we want,
yes,
somehow things don't work out that way.
pace and the quality of the change. That is something that
Because
we have.
somehow we are always coming back to that
And
same
yes.
run.
Teaching.
The
One
base
level
has
to
not
two levels.
changed. The societal base has not changed.
The social base has not changed, and unless it changes, nothing will change.
Nothing
No
will
matter
change.
how
Yeah, I
educated we become,
Yes,
how much.
Yes.
and this
No,
women
you know, that is-
themselves
that
are
is
so
what,
conditioned.
Meera, that is what Subhadraji was pointing out, that you know, at a topper echelons, you will find these kind of very intellectual discussions on how women are changing, how things are changing, how your thought process is changing. But when you go down to the basics, that is why I talked about the
Absolutely.
rearing of a child. Because when you go down to the basics, the base remains the same. Unless
Yes.
that changes, nothing will
Because
change.
Purabi,
It
women are
has
also
not
very
changed
much
within the
conditioned.
White House. Imagine people people are objecting because Joe Biden's wife was referred to as Dr. Biden. And
Right.
Americans were protesting about that. That how could you call a woman as the first lady as Dr. Biden?
And you know, those
That
women,
so much of mentality is still there.
yeah, not only that, you have women in America who are Indians who are now US citizens. They look down upon Indians because we are not the whites. We are the browns and we are the blacks, you know.
Actually, much
So,
more
you know,
strong
these
there.
are
Gender is intersected with
It's
so many
ridiculous.
different
I mean,
things like
very
race, class. Yeah.
There are a number of variables in which you can
Yeah,
interpret.
exactly.
Yeah, that's a different
Exactly.
issue. Then we can have
But
another
one thing is
lecture.
fact here that we are conditioned. No, we are conditioned from our childhood in being brought up in a particular manner,
Absolutely.
and that is not really being removed.
Absolutely.
Any more questions?
And
Societal base has to
Ranjana,
change. That's what
I would like to, in fact, since I work with children, there is one very good observation which I would like to share with all of you. We have these tinkering labs. And in the tinkering labs, we do not have girls who come into the tinkering labs. We have only boys coming. So I think, that right from school, maybe we need to have parenting sessions where we talk to the parents about how do you bring about sort of keeping the feminism intact. How do you really bring about this sort of a respect and harmony between men and women? Because I think each one has got their own strengths. And I think our larger goal is towards a peaceful society and a sustainable society. So what is the role that a woman plays and what is the role that a man plays in that? I think maybe, you know, we have to really work on that to create an awareness. In fact, Subhadra ji, you
It's
have
all
spoken really-
Malti, it'll all be at peace if you listen to the men.
No. I don't think so. There are men who listen to women also.
No.
Yes,
But you see,
that
what
is
we
there.
were talking,
Question at all.
I said all the time that we are not talking about men and women.
Correct, correct.
We are
Yeah,
talking
it's not
about
that.
all social values,
It's a value.
Correct.
masculine values and feminine values.
Because I think, you know, a woman has got her own strengths of nurturance and a man has got his own strengths. And how do you sort
The
of
point
balance?
is not that, we all
between-
know that.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it's
between a man and a
nurturance
woman.
being valued more than what the man can do. That is the kind of society we are looking for.
We are
as
talking
women.
about the
Where-
holistic structure. We are
Yeah,
not
the
talking about
nurturance is
Overall
given more
structure
value.
we're talking
Not
about.
of individual cases, as I'm constantly saying, are very different.
That
Okay,
is
we
so
are
true.
done.
In fact, I would like to share an example. Once when my daughter was traveling to the south, the train broke down and she traveled in the engine with the engine driver. And everybody was shocked. They said, how can you, a girl, travel with an engine driver? I mean, like, you know, the questions which were asked to her was so different. I mean, she had a problem in front of her. She had to solve the problem and she did that. And nobody noticed that, but they were more concerned about, a woman, a girl, how could she have gone into? So I think these are some questions that we need to ask. It was really wonderful. Yeah, thank you.
No, that's really a good way
Can we
to,
finish now?
for now, we have
Just one
probably
more thing.
this
May I put it?
conversation. Yeah, just the last point and we can.
Just one sentence. I really liked what Dr. Chandler said about childcare as a part of office culture and not as a part of reform. We really have to keep this in.
Yeah, that's what I said. It should have been a normal part of, but it is treated as a reform, as something extra.
Yes. As a
Not
part,
as something which should normally have been part of it.
yes, as an
That
act
is-
of
that is the
generosity.
difference. That is the
As an
critical
act of generosity on the part of men.
Yeah, exactly. So we have to take it as a favor
Yes.
and not as something which
It is
should
a
have been
photo.
there
I
anyway.
think we can break this if more women are involved in decision-making bodies.
Well, that
What do
is
you say?
fair.
I totally
Then I
agree.
think even
yeah.
women don't, they are also so enculturated that they often overlook these. Anyway, I think
I
that-
totally agree with what you are saying, because just today I had a problem in our schools, because once we open up, we have teachers who have very small children, and the schools, all schools have not opened. So those children have to be online. They have to stay at home. So how can this mother leave the child at home? So I said, let the child also come with the mother to school, and we'll make arrangement for that child to be having her online class or his online class. I think, you know, these sorts of, maybe because I'm a woman, that I've realized the importance, but maybe this sort of conversations have to happen.
You have,
If
right.
we have to encourage, like, you know, support feminism, maybe.
Thank you. No, I think everybody agrees with what Malati just ended this conversation. And I'm sorry to have to stop this at this moment, but I'm sure there's many avenues which we can discuss this further. May I thank Dr. Chana for this really
Varsha,
invigorating.
now you close the program
Yes. I'm just going to invite
and call for Gomati.
Gomati. Yeah, I'm going to invite Gomati Venkateshwar to give the formal vote of thanks. May I hand it over to her?
In the meantime, Subhadra, hi and bye.
Hello, Amrita.
How are you?
See
It
you
was a
after a
pleasure.
long time.
Same thing I'm saying. We met last in Calcutta, I think Asiatic Society. It was a pleasure. Normally, you know, you may or may not attend, but I have been sitting and enjoying your discussions and everybody's participation. You know, I had certain doubts about, you know.
Amrita only got me into the UA. Long time ago.
I know.
Hello, Amrita. Hello.
Hi, Ranjana. It's a pleasure to see you. I saw your name in the group.
Nice to see you after such a long time.
Ranjana, are you a member of UWA?
No, no, no.
Uh-huh. She's,
I have invited her to be
how
here.
nice. Veena, it's a
Yes.
good. You got some people.
Nice to
And
see
now
you.
so many anthropologists.
Nice to see all of you. We've got a real good
Same.
population today.
Hello,
Yeah.
is the vote
The
of
topic-
thanks going to be done?
हाँ,
Let's
कर
go to
दीजिए, कर
thanks.
दीजिए.
Gomati, go ahead.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Dr. Subhadra Channa, I think we are all being very privileged this evening to have had you with us at a very burning issue of the role of feminism and its impact in all facets of our life. Because the kind of question you said that one should ask oneself, am I a feminist, is something I've always asked myself, because I fight for women and their rights. But there comes a time when I give way, seeing the domination of the menfolk all around me, and I feel that discretion is the better part of valor rather than fight it out with them. But listening to you, I find that there comes a time when we women should take up the force of our being women and carry on what men can't do without us. I mean, how can men exist if women, try to boycott, as we did during the freedom struggle, boycott British good? If we boycott what men force us to do, then I think there could be a slight shift in the balance. As members of the National Federation like the IFUR, which works for the education of women, their empowerment and development of leadership skills to make their position in society shoulder to shoulder with their male counterparts for the betterment of our community and the society in the country we live in, the pandemic and the lockdown that followed brought to the forefront two very strong issues which have come up. That one, their position worsened by the fact that some of them lost their jobs, the children were at home, they had extra burdens, but it also came out very recently. I don't wish to sort of talk more about it because it has to be given out in a report, but women were found to be far more resilient in coming out of the situation and taking charge of their lives in this pandemic.
Absolutely.
This talk on feminism and its impact on various aspects of our life by Dr. Chennai will definitely guide us through difficult paths that lie before us. And I hope, Dr. Channa, that you would come again on our platform and give us more of your thoughts.
Yes.
I would also like to tell you, Dr. Channa, that my daughter is also an anthropologist like you, rather a reputed anthropologist in New Zealand. Her name is Dr. Sita Venkateshwar. You might have heard of her. And she has also worked in the field of agriculture and with Dalits in India. She lives in New Zealand and is working now in the field of agriculture and the change in the mode of cultivation for human beings. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ranjana Banerjee, for having had this wonderful program for the IFUA and all its members across the country.
And Ranjana, you must make Subhadra ji a member. I don't know whether
You
she
should
is
become
a
a
member.
member of
Yes,
the
sir.
team.
Thank you, Subhadraji, for a very invigorating and enlightening
Honored
talk.
to
We
be a
really
member.
enjoyed, and you kept that to it to make it very interactive. And dear sisters of all the UWAs, thank you for your participation.
We have really enjoyed
Good
this.
night.
Thank you so much.
Really
Ranjana.
enjoyable.
Be
That
nice
was-
to you.
This is lovely. Have a beautiful evening and hope to meet all of you in the next session. Thank you.
Thank you, Varsha.
Thank you, Varsha.
Thank you, everybody. It was a wonderful session. Wonderful.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Subhadra.
Bye-bye.
It was very
Bye-bye.
Bye,
encouraging.
Nita, and bye, Nita.
Varsha, where are
Likadi.
you from?
Bye, Likadi.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ranjana, bye bye.
Bye bye. Thank you for your
Varsha.
Gomati di, bye. I think
Bye,
she's over.
Malti.
Bye,
Malti, bye.
Nita.
We'll catch up.
Yeah,
Meera will
Ranjana,
catch
bye.
up.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Amrita.
Bye, 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 my dears.
I'm closing the session.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Puravi.
Thank you.
Thank you,
so
Purvi.
much.